What's up, guys? Welcome to my YouTube. It's your girl, Gia McCool, and you are here for part two with Mr. Zuby over here.
What up?
So we left the best questions for last. And if you have not checked out the first part of this, I linked it down below, so go check it out. Make sure you watch that before you get into the second part. You ready to start?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So you made a reference on a Monday. And it was so fitting that I was like, oh yeah, this is a good one. This is a really good one. It's going to touch on everybody around the world.
Okay.
I'm going to reference it.
What have I done now?
Why is it that liberals and progressives generally believe the pandemic is so much more scary and deadly than conservatives and libertarians do? You asked different threat sensitivities, personality types. Is it media sources? Is it groups? What do you think?
Personally, I think it's all the above and more. I gave those suggestions sort of rhetorically because I think it's a combination of all of them. One thing that people don't actually understand or know is that political orientation is actually really strongly linked and somewhat predictable based on personality type. So if someone does an in-depth personality test, you can actually, with some accuracy, know where they'll be on the political spectrum. And a lot of people don't understand that connection. So I think that's a big part of it. And so it's known that the way people, to use the terms liberals and conservatives, the way each group views threats is quite different, actually. And in many cases, I think broadly speaking, it's been a little conflated on this issue, but broadly speaking, I think conservatives are more, this has even been studied, conservatives are more sensitive to, say, human threats, whereas liberals are more sensitive to, say, environmental threats. So that could be a disease, it could be virus, that could be climate change, that could be something environmental. Conservatives might be more concerned about, borders and immigration, immigration and that kind of stuff, or even crime in general, right? It's not conservatives pushing for, defund the police or whatever. They understand the consequences of that. So I think that's a big part of it. Also, the media sources are different. If you follow, depending on where you get your news from, it paints two different realities, just like it painted different realities of, the past 4 years or 5 years with Trump, or if you're in the UK, say with Brexit. Depending on which media source you're getting your info from, is painting a totally different picture, and that has a real world impact. Then when that happens, people get siloed off, especially with social media, and remember that over the past year and a half, people have been far more isolated than usual. So actually that's a compounding factor, because people form their own realities. So we're at a stage right now in August 2021, where you've got, I don't know, say half the population who is still living in terror of this pandemic, and there's a virus that's just going through, and everybody is in danger, even children, even like the stats don't really matter to them. It's very emotionally driven, and that's what the media is also giving them. And they're still going around. They've probably had 2 injections, and they're still wearing 2 masks, and they're still afraid to interact normally. And then you've got another huge swathe of the population who's been totally back to normal, just living life, not wearing a mask unless absolutely forced to, meeting with hundreds or even thousands of people, going to events, whatever. And both sides are kind of looking at each other and being like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Right? They're looking at both sides, and it's this huge schism. And I think this schism is actually getting to a dangerous level, in fact. It's getting to a dangerous level where you've got people advocating for segregation and for discrimination based on medical status, which is something we've never previously...
They're classifying people into groups.
Exactly.
And I personally believe that it has a lot to do with upbringing and religion too. That also really gives a perspective that's very different.
Yes.
So like depending on where you are in the world, if it's predominantly a certain religion, that's going to have a great deal of change in how they deal with the pandemic versus somebody else.
Yeah, I think also what's been exposed as well is our society, modern society, has a really uncomfortable relationship, I think, with death, right? People are behaving as if prior to 2020, everybody was immortal. or prior to 2020, there were no viruses or pathogens and nobody ever got sick. And all of a sudden, this thing came in 2020 and suddenly everybody is potentially sick. Everybody can spread it. Everybody's ill, right? Why is it, wearing a mask, you can't spread a virus you don't have, right? I'm not afraid of giving you Ebola because I don't have Ebola, but people have been trained and propagandized to see themselves and everybody else as a virus vector, which is extraordinarily dangerous, actually. And in terms of divisions in society, one of the worst divisions possible that can be created is that one group is an existential threat to another one, right? That's led to some very, very dark things throughout history. So for me, that's the part of it that I find, there's a lot of it I find concerning, but that part I'm very much like, okay.
No, you touched on it perfectly, because in 2 years, I've had my father, my brother, and now my grandmother pass away. Not from COVID, not from the pandemic, not from anything to do with what everybody is fearful.
Yes.
So for me, death isn't, I've never been fearful of death. Even before that, I wasn't fearful. But even more now, I'm definitely not fearful of death. You have to live life and you have to live it to your fullest and make yourself happy. And if what you're doing right now is living out of fear, you live once. Why do you want to live that way?
Yeah, exactly. People are so afraid of dying that they're not living.
Yeah.
Right? Like for the past year and approaching 2 years, I'm sure some of this silliness is going to go beyond 2 years. And that's like, people are giving up all of that time, which you can never get back because they're so afraid of taking any risk. The truth is that life inherently has risk. Every time you get in a car, every time you go outside, every time you go out, and everything we do contains risk. And we've always just accepted that as adults.
No, and
right?
at what point are you going to stop accepting what's being told to you? Start doing your own research and realizing that a lot of the stuff that's happening in society is not allowed and it's not legal. And if you do your research, you have the right to say no.
Yes.
And you have the right to stand up for your rights. So there's that side that I really don't understand. At what point are you going to wake up and say, okay, this is not allowed, this is not right? Yeah,
and I think it's different for different people. I think, honestly, and I hate saying this, but I think some people are not coming back from this. I think I think in 10 years' time,
I don't think that there is. I don't think everyone keeps saying, "I want the normal." There is no more normal. What was. That's was. It's no longer here. Now you got to make your own new normal. You got to make your own happiness. I keep saying that over and over again. Stop leaving it up to other people's hands to give that to you. You got to make it happen.
Yeah, and your rights are your rights. People have forgotten what the role of government is supposed to be as well, assuming they believed it in the first place, right? You have inalienable, God-given rights. You have a right to your own freedom and your own body and your own self and your own movements and actions, as long as they're not directly harming another person. And this has all been inverted, right? This has all been inverted, and people need to understand that they are already free. The power always lies in the hands of the people. People have been, whatever country you're in, we've been allowing 0.001% of the population to set the entire rules for, in some cases, hundreds of millions of people. And this is not how it's meant to be. The countries we live in are supposed to be liberal and democratic, right? Joe Biden is not a dictator. Boris Johnson is not supposed to be a dictator. Justin Trudeau, Jacinda Ardern, like all these politicians who are just now stepping out and saying, well, Bill de Blasio in New York City saying, well, if you want your freedom back, if you want to participate, you have to take this injection. I mean, how insane is that? They're saying you can't fully participate in society, and we're going to discriminate against you unless you inject this foreign substance into your body. Now, people can have their own views on medicines and this particular vaccine, whatever. I'm not even really specifically talking about that, but the very notion of that the government can force you to inject something into your body should freak you the hell out, wherever you sit on the political aisle, because if they can mandate that and force you to do that and force millions of people to do that, they can do anything. And as we know in the past, if you've studied history, even given it a cursory glance, you know that when you give the government that kind of unchecked power, things go bad real quick.
Yeah, and you gotta know, like that's what I'm saying, don't leave it, that's why I keep saying, don't leave it up to other people. Do your own research, know your constitution, know what's allowed, what's not allowed, and then act on it. Don't just complain and get mad at people for doing the action.
Yeah.
choice.
People have
Choice.
to stand up for themselves, honestly.
You have been around the world. You've been outside of the U.S., inside the U.S. What do you see for the future now, moving forward?
Such a big question.
It is.
Um,
And this is just your own view, but what can you help somebody who's looking at this and just kind of feels hopeless? What do you
well,
feel?
the first thing is I would say I think that hopelessness is how they want you to feel. When I say they, I'm largely talking to certain elements of the political and media class, and I think that the past year and a half has been a gigantic psyop. It's been a gigantic propaganda campaign designed to make you feel discouraged and to break your spirits, because once your spirit is broken, you will accept and even advocate for things that previously you would have stood against. So don't allow yourself to get demoralized, because that is literally, that ends in a bad place, right? If everybody's demoralized, then people are just like, you know what, we're just, and you've seen that, that's already happened, right?
Yeah.
If they came out on day
Desperate
one.
measures.
Exactly. You know, people are so demoralized, they're just like, I'll do anything to get out of this loop of lockdowns and mandates and
And
this
what you
and
don't
that.
realize is when you succumb to one,
Yep.
the next will follow, and then the
Mhm.
next, and the next.
Exactly. It's a compliance ladder.
Yeah. So your advice for our viewers right now is don't feel hopeless. Don't feel like there is, you know.
Use your voice.
Yes.
Use your voice. Use your
Yes.
Twitter,
Don't be
Instagram
afraid.
fingers, etc.
People are not. If you're doing what the minority is doing, you're going to have the majority against you. That's just how it is. But don't feel like you can't speak out. You know, you're an individual. You have that right. You can say how you feel, and everyone needs to respect, even if they don't agree. They need to respect. So.
Yeah.
Well, Zuby, I super appreciate you being here. We have covered some really great topics, and I'm just looking forward to the future with you. He does some amazing podcasts. If you don't know where to go, I've linked it below. You guys can check it all out.
Mhm.
Don't forget to like this video.
Smash
Until
that like
next
button.
time, see y'all soon.
Thank you.